we have Brad Siegel from our consulting team from PUMA out of Denver to give us a lot of good information that I think is really going to spur on some conversation and some questions. And then after that happens tonight, we have the stations, if some of you have already seen. These are kind of idea stations, different topics that we would like to hear from you about. And that'll take place specifically after we're done with the formal presentation tonight. I would also like to point out that Terry Euland from the Downtown Lincoln Association is on stage with me, and he's going to speak in a moment. But this is a joint venture, a partnership between the city and DLA, and that is very much appreciated as well. And so the whole process that we're about to really get going on here, starting with tonight's event, is to really engage the community about our downtown and find out how we can make it the best downtown that it can be. And keep the momentum going that we have over the last several years of really changing our downtown. There's so much has happened, so much positive momentum that we have, and we want to continue to do that. So this is a very exciting time for all of us, and we want to have you be part of this. This is your downtown. Specifically, I want to make sure that we're aware that on May 23rd, we are going to have another event as part of a charrette. There's a multi-day charrette, what that is kind of a workshop to engage you all and others in the community to continue this conversation. But on May 23rd, there's going to be another open house, so we'd like you to try to make that event, maybe put a note into your calendars right now to make sure that you know that that's going to happen, because it really is important to hear from you and to make you as part of this process. So with that, I want to thank you for coming tonight, and I'm going to hand it off to Terry Euland from the Downtown Lincoln Association.
Thanks, David. I just want to add to the words of welcome and reflect that while I was watching you come in my 11 years at DLA, I'm looking around the room and seeing so many people that have been so integral to downtown and to Lincoln. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for coming. That's really important, and we don't thank you for that nearly often enough. This is the most important thing that DLA is doing this year, participating in with the city. It sets the tone for the future. The 2005 master plan had an immense impact on all the things that have surprised us in the last few years. So we're hoping we can get on the plateau that we're on now and go to a whole new one rather than resting on our laurels. So that's why we're doing this. Thanks again for coming. I think you'll find Brad's presentation very interesting. I'm very familiar with it, and it's very thought-provoking and useful. But before that, we have an opening act. Deputy Director at DLA, Todd Ogden, has an exercise that he wants to take you through. But once again, thank you for all you do, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Terry and Dave. Like you said, we're going to introduce Brad Siegel here in a second, but he requires a warm-up act, so that is me. Like Terry said, there's a lot of people we recognize, a lot of people that are new here potentially, and we want to get a feel for the crowd. So just to warm you up a little bit, if you want to go to menti.com on your phone, METI.com. If you don't have your phones, don't worry, this isn't scientific, but we want to get a feel for the crowd right now. So as you log in, it looks like some people may have logged in already. We want to know how your friends would describe you in 3 words. We really want to get a feel for who you are and who we're dealing with today. So it looks like we already have some bizarre, hard-work, sarcastic, outgoing, and loud people. So this is going to be a fun and interesting crowd for Brad to work forward. So as we can see that, we have some people filling up the spots, and you can see this word cloud here. It's an outgoing bunch of individuals. So yeah, your friends must feel very highly about you guys. So we've got a couple more questions after this one and want to get a feel for it. So I'll give you a second to answer some of these. So there's a tall earth man in there. I'd like to know that person. And a crabby and a vivacious. So it's a really interesting crowd. So 37 as that populates. I'll give you a couple more seconds. So it looks like you guys are funny, fun, outgoing, smart, sarcastic, and not funny. So that's a good group of individuals. So I think this is a good feel for the poll. I think we're ready for the next question if you want to go to that. What part of town are you from? So first thing that pops in mind, or what part of Lincoln? If you're outside of Lincoln, put the city, a neighborhood, an area of town, and we want to get a feel for what part of town you're from here today. West Side. So it looks like we have a vast number of downtown residents here. That's wonderful to see. Near south, just south of downtown. I appreciate that in the word cloud. West side, Fox Hollow, southwest, Country Club, Fallbrook, southeast. So a wide range, a wide area of people. So that's good to see that we have a nice mix today for you, especially as we go and work from here. So I'll give people a couple more seconds and we'll go to the next question. 91 respondents, downtown's number one. Let's head to the next question. Besides living and working, what brings you downtown? So this is going to be a pie chart that populates the categories. So are you coming here to go to the movies, arts and cultural events, sporting and special events, bars, dining, shopping? If you want to yell something out too and you don't have your phone, go ahead and yell it out too if you want to be a part of the process. Poker night. Somebody said poker night. That's a good one. First Friday art walks. Did anybody hit up the last First Friday art walk, by the way? Did you all go to Dean's shop over at his gallery? Yes, everybody said yes, Dean. All right, that hit the quota. Thank you for braving the weather. That was a tough First Friday to have, but we're glad people still went out anyway during the wonderful snow. So this is a good group of people. We have bars and live entertainment, especially being here at the Rococo. I'm sure the owners like to hear that. Dining, arts and cultural events, and going to the movies, sporting events, and shopping. So that's kind of the breakdown right now. As you can see when this is over too, it'll email you the results if you want to see those. Now for the last question. What 3 businesses do you most frequent downtown? This is a little scary because a lot of people own businesses here, so don't take offense. It's a mixed group. It doesn't have to be dining, shopping. It can be a parking garage that you go to. It could be a business, a bank that you frequent. Arch Rival is winning pretty well, so that's good. The Night Before Lounge, that's good. That's been grandfathered into downtown. We cannot have sexually oriented live entertainment options anymore, but appreciate the option up there. People have been to Blue, Laszlo's, Zoo Bar, Arch Rival, Yaya's, Walgreens, Jake's. Any other shout outs that we have out there as these are populating? Where's that? Haymarket Square? Tavern on the Square, of course, yes. All right, Gate 25, Dish, Arch Rival. Are there any Arch Rival employees here today by chance? All right, as you can tell, I'm a warm-up for a reason. This is just to get you a feel for what we have, so thank you for being patient with me. As we go to next here, you can see that you can even have this emailed to your phone to see what people said. And with that said, I want to introduce Mr. Brad Siegel. He is the president of Progressive Urban Management Associates, PUMA. And he has worked with many cities around the country in vast ranges and been in this downtown professional world for over 30 years. And we are very privileged to have him here. And with that said, I want to introduce Brad Siegel.
Thanks, Todd, and thank you, everyone. You're going to see tonight the warm-up act may eclipse the main act, but we'll see how it goes. So thank you all for coming tonight. Great turnout tonight for downtown, and what this means is this town is really passionate about downtown. I was told earlier that someone had a wedding here and they had about 300 guests, and that filled the lower level, and I'm seeing people in the upper level, so there's at least 200 of you, which is a great turnout tonight. I do want to make a couple of acknowledgments before I get going on this. This downtown plan from the consulting side, there are 3 firms that are here working on this. So from PUMA, which is the lead firm, we're from Denver, we're market real estate economists and planners. JJ Folsom is our project manager, JJ, and then Daniel Makala is also working with us. In this corner, our urban designers are from a firm called Civitas. And we have Jason, and then we have the native son, Dick Farley. You got to stand up. Dick Farley, born and bred in Lincoln, Nebraska. Dick was the lead urban designer in Denver in the 90s and has just had an amazing career and all that talent that he's bringing back to the hometown, which is great. And then also we have Rick, and we've got a firm called FHU, which is Transportation Experts. Rick is the local guy. He's actually based here in Lincoln. The way this will work tonight, I'm going to give you a presentation on different trends that are shaping cities, and I'm going to talk about what the implications are for Lincoln. And that's to get all of our minds sort of moving and going so that we can be as creative as possible tonight and think about the future. After I do the presentation, we'll have a few minutes for some questions on the trends. And then JJ is going to take the stage. He's going to talk about some preliminary results from an online survey. We've had about 600 Lincolnites so far respond to our online survey. Anyone in the audience taken the online survey? Okay, so a fair amount of you, but many of you haven't. So we're going to keep the online survey up through actually the next 6 weeks. And we'll talk about that when JJ's up here. And then after that, we want you to interact with us. We want you to interact with all the planners. So there's a series, and David mentioned this, there's a series of tables. And in each of these tables, we will be available to talk about urban design, housing, transportation, and they stuck me in the hallway to talk about economic development. And we want to talk about all of these things with you one-on-one. So that's how the evening is gonna pan out. So let me start with this discussion of trends, and these are 10 trends that are shaping cities. This is a body of research that our firm put together 10 years ago, and we were the economists for the downtown plan in Denver, which is our hometown. And we were asked to look ahead 20 years for our city. So instead of looking at past real estate trends, what we did is we looked at different demographic, lifestyle, and competitive trends that are shaping cities all over the country, and then we brought that back to Denver. And what we found is it not only informed our own planning, but it also resonated in communities all over the country. And we've had a great run. We've been able to work in more than 200 cities, 36 states, including Lincoln. I go back almost 20 years here in Lincoln working with the Downtown Lincoln Association. So we found that these trends resonated and really applied to many, many cities. So we've continued to update this information. And don't worry about this slide. This is a bit of an eye test, but what this tells you is that we've periodically updated the research and we've changed the trends as the world is changing. This is an incredible time that we're living in right now. Just all sorts of change day to day. So these different trends, and if you're really inspired to learn more tonight, my last slide is our website, and you can pick up our trend report on the website and you can read the detail on this. So I'm going to start talking about different demographics, and there really are 3 and soon 4 generations that are shaping cities. So the first one, there's some audience participation here. The first one are baby boomers. How many of you in the audience will admit along with me that you're over 50? Who's over 50? Whoa, yeah, boomers. I think we're being honest in here. So about maybe at least a third, almost half. So we all know about boomers. We shaped a lot of the post-World War II era, high education rates. We're living longer and healthier. And then for us boomers, this is how it all ends for us boomers here, this picture on the slide. You know, we're happy, we're healthy, we're in love, we're on some beach somewhere, right? Well, no, not so much. For boomers, we were the generation that was really hit by the recession 10 years ago, and particularly in retirement savings. And what that means is a lot of us are aging in place, or we're aging in the cities that reside in. And I'm going to argue tonight that's actually good news for downtown and downtown Lincoln. How many of you are 35 to 50? 35 to 50. So a sprinkling of Gen X, or at least those who admit that they're Gen X. So when I started doing these presentations 10 years ago, I used to call all you folks slackers, is what I would call Gen X. But not anymore. Gen X has grown up. This is where the most of the disposable income is in the economy now. Most Gen X families have children. And I think the most important thing is the bottom bullet here is that Gen X really moving into leadership positions. So in more and more cities that we're working in, whether it's city council or is boards for nonprofits or boards of leadership organizations, more and more it's this age group that is starting to lead our communities and our cities, particularly as boomers start to step aside and retire. Millennials, do we have anyone in the 20 to 35 age range tonight? Oh, we have maybe more millennials than Gen X. All right, hear it for millennials. So millennials, they're going to save us, right, from everything we've created. And I'm a millennial parent. I got two boys. They're 24, 27, and I do scratch my head sometimes that these guys are going to save us. But they are. This is an important generation. Every city in the country is competing to keep or attract millennials, and I'll talk about why here in a minute. So growing up with technology, very optimistic, tolerant. Also, they're redefining adult milestones. My younger millennial, lived in my basement after college for a year and a half, and that's just more and more common. They are redefining adult milestones. So when we did the last trends report, we also said, okay, what's next? What's next after millennials? And particularly for downtown areas, this is a key question. In many of the cities we're working in, there's a lot of housing that's under construction, and that's something we're going to look at very closely in Lincoln. But in cities like Denver, where there's thousands of units under construction, the question is how robust is that pipeline? How long are these young people going to move into downtown? And the answer is for a while. The Gen Z seems to have a lot of the same lifestyle patterns as their older millennial brothers and sisters. There are some fascinating differences, though, in this generation that's under 20. One, they're more cautious. And they've grown up in a fairly turbulent time. So post 9/11, 24-hour news cycle, school shootings, all of this is having an impact on the younger generation. Less oriented to college. So college enrollments are actually projected to fall a bit with this next generation, with Gen Z. Reasons for that: one is, for some professions, you just don't need the 4-year degree anymore. So you can go to coding school, for example, go to coding school for 8 weeks, and you can qualify for a $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 job. Also, a lot of Gen Z have seen their older millennial brothers and sisters move back home with giant college debts, and that's dissuading them from college. And then lastly, and this is fascinating, it's the third bullet on there, the early research on Gen Z finds that they may actually be more materialistic than millennials. So millennials tend to share things, they're not that interested in owning things. That may turn around moving forward. Second trend, second demographic we look at, and this is huge for the future of Lincoln, and I think folks in Lincoln, certainly in the business community, get this. Lincoln, along with every city in the country, is competing for a young, skilled workforce, and this is those millennials that I was talking about. So this whole presentation, the third bullet on the slide, may be the most important here. Millennials today are more than 40% of the national workforce. They could be almost half of the workforce just within the next 3 years. Some projections have them being 3/4 of the workforce by the middle of the next decade. So if Lincoln wants to be competitive, if we want people to continue to work in a variety of different jobs, Lincoln, along with all sorts of other cities, need to make sure we have an environment, we have a city that this age group, this 20 to 35 age group, wants to be in as they age too. So many of the next slides I'll talk about how these folks are wired and how we can prepare for them. The third trend, this was new in our last trend report, and I would suggest this is a big, big positive message for Lincoln. Rise of the mid-tier city. There is a reverse migration going on away from what are called superstar cities. So these magnet cities, places like San Francisco or Nashville, Denver. What's happening is we're pricing our labor force out of our market. My hometown right now, Denver, Colorado, is now the highest priced non-coastal housing market in the United States. And that's really difficult. If you're moving from California, it's no big deal, it's still a bargain. But if you're moving from the Midwest to Denver, it's a serious, serious problem. So what we're seeing is nationwide, we're seeing that people are flocking to mid-tier cities where there's a lower cost of living, there's a great quality of life, and there's also an opportunity to get plugged into civic affairs, which is an opportunity for Lincoln that I'll talk about in a moment. Next set of trends get into lifestyles. So consumption. Boomers, until the recession, we would spend like drunken sailors. We were all about impulse buying. And that has changed. That's changed in the last 10 years. So the subsequent generations, Gen X, millennials, and that's where the most of the disposable income is. More deliberate. Using the internet, not so much to buy, but certainly to shop. So majority of shopping now happens on the internet, and then people will still go to a brick and mortar store to actually make the purchase. In fact, last year, only 8% of all retail sales were actually on the internet, but that continues to increase from year to year. So the niche for downtown remains what it's been really for the last 20 years. Local, independent, unique shops are really the best niche for most downtowns, including downtown Lincoln. Transportation and mobility. So on the slide, we have the millennial not knowing exactly what that machine is behind him. And that's a trend. Younger generations not as inclined to drive as older generations. In fact, only 60% nationally, 60% of 18-year-olds have driver's licenses in the United States. That's as low a rate as the 1960s. And so what younger people are looking for, they're looking for other ways to get around. They want to get around, they want to walk, they want to bike, they're more inclined to take transit. And I realize in Lincoln, Nebraska, it doesn't take a lot of time to drive to different places throughout the city, and certainly cars are not going to disappear. But if we want young people to stay, if we want young people to move back, we'd argue that having different alternatives for mobility is important as we move forward. Housing. Again, a new trend that we added to our trend report within the last year. More and more cities are turning into neighborhoods. So a place like Lincoln that traditionally is more of a one-dimensional business center, we're seeing more and more are becoming neighborhoods with housing and different amenities. So a real opportunity, I suspect, is going to be a strong focus of this downtown plan of how do we get a broad range of housing options established in downtown Lincoln. The second bullet there, nationally, studies have shown is that there are rent premiums. People will pay more. People will pay more to be in walkable downtown environments, and sometimes they'll shed a car. Instead of 2 cars, maybe they'll have 1 car. Regionalism. So this gets a little bit into politics. When we started doing this 10 years ago, everyone in this room and everyone in your family accounted for $29,000 of the American national debt. Today, everyone in this room accounts for $63,000 of national debt. And what our message here is that the federal government, forget about dysfunction, it's broke. It really cannot spend. At some point, there's a reckoning, and the federal government cannot spend what it's been spending. We cannot rely, cities cannot rely on the federal government for funding in innovation, in infrastructure, and education in the way they have in the past. So our message here is the importance of regionalism, of regions investing in what they need to make them work. In the Denver area where I'm from, we have a great tradition going back to the 1980s where we have 6 counties that have continually voted for a variety of investments, from transit to our airport to stadiums to convention facilities to streets and roads to school funding to different general obligation bonds, makes our city more competitive. So when we look at Lincoln and we look at the region and we look at the needs, more and more investment locally and a role for downtown to advocate on behalf of these things. Last set of trends, and then I'm going to pull it together with some recommendations for Lincoln. So the last set gets into competition. This chart is fascinating to me. This is the 3 largest economies on the planet over 200 years. And if you go back to 1850, China, India, the United Kingdom were the largest economies. This year, it's the United States, China, and Japan. Since we started doing this trend analysis, China grew over Japan. Japan was actually number 2 until about 6-7 years ago. 2050, it's sort of back to the future. It's China, India, and hopefully the United States still in the mix at that point. So what's happening is there is an enormous amount of consumption that's happening on the other side of the planet. And the implication for us in Lincoln is it's creating pressures on the commodities that we rely on for growth. So the second bullet on here, China. Global car sales. In the year 2000, China was less than 1% of global car sales. 2016, more than 30% of global car sales were in China. In the United States, we were 34% in the year 2000. We were almost 19% in the year 2016, which was a strong year for American car sales. The point is this pressure, this growth in these countries is going to continue to put price pressure on steel, on concrete, and petroleum. And cities and downtowns are going to be increasingly a smart investment, an economical investment moving forward. Technology. What's new in technology? Interestingly, when we look at how we shape our lives, it's these devices that we carry in our pockets that are shaping how we live now. This iPhone, the iPhone didn't exist when we started our trend report just over 10 years ago. It was 2007 that this was introduced. There are going to be more than 9 billion mobile connections by the year 2020, which means we are doing a better job getting phone technology in people's hands than we are feeding people on the planet. This is changing all sorts of things. It changes how we use space. So when there's new residential construction now, typically there's less concentration on individual space, more on social space. Office concepts. You can see this in downtown Lincoln, co-working, people working together, also relying on mobile technologies and other innovations to create businesses. So we don't need to lure necessarily 1,000-person businesses, but can we create businesses like Huddle that are homegrown and they become large businesses over time. And then also, of course, we've got this endless pipeline of talent with the University of Nebraska, so we're going to be looking very strongly at that. The last trend, and then I'm going to sort of stitch this all together for you. When we started this more than 10 years ago, we talked about sustainability, and there's 3 different areas on sustainability. There is having a sustainable economy, the environment, and then something called social equity. And we think at this point, 2018, most folks sort of get the first 2. They get the fact you have to have a healthy economy and you have to have some balance with the environment. But social equity gets to the inequity that we're creating in our society. And going back to those mid-tier cities that are now increasingly attractive, those cities that create opportunities for a whole variety of folks, opportunities not just for the tech workers, but opportunities for service workers, for people locally who can go into manufacturing, a whole variety of things. Those are the cities that can succeed. So in this plan, in this downtown plan, we think it's going to be a little bit different because we're not just going to look solely at downtown, but we're also going to look at the adjacent neighborhoods. And how can we make sure those neighborhoods relate to downtown? How can we create opportunities in downtown that feed the neighborhoods and vice versa? It's a great opportunity, really unique to Lincoln, I would argue, at this point in time. So conclusions and then some quick things for you to think about. All this information, and again, I'll give you a website where you can grab our trends report. 250 different sources on these different 10 trends. It really boils down to 6 different conclusions, which are together are very favorable for vibrant downtowns. Vibrant is there for a reason, but for vibrant downtowns. So 1, demographics are in downtown's favor. Population is growing both older and younger at the same time. Both those generations are predisposed to be in walkable urban environments. Increasingly connected and competitive world. That gets into nurturing small businesses and can we partner with the University of Nebraska, the local community colleges, other educational institutions to really create a place that nurtures small businesses and entrepreneurs in a whole variety of industry segments. The emergence of new opportunity cities, clearly an opportunity for Lincoln. Can we be one of those mid-tier cities of choice that people want to move back home to or as an alternative to a Denver or a more expensive city? Global growth, making investment in cities more attractive. That's that China-India thing and the fact that existing infrastructure is going to be much more cost-effective to use over time. Innovation and investment, more reliant on regional initiative, not relying on the federal government to come up with money for infrastructure, education, innovation, but knowing that we need to look inward within our region. And then lastly, planning for economic and cultural diversity, having the opportunity in Lincoln to really have opportunity for the wide spectrum of jobs and different professions to emerge here, from blue collar, white collar, and everything in between. So, just some quick last few slides, implications for Lincoln. And these are just some suggestions, and as I told you earlier, this presentation is really to get all of your minds going so that when you're talking to us at these tables, we can really think a little bit outside the box and think forward for the future of downtown. But on demographics, are we capturing those young people? Are we getting our share? in Lincoln? Are we welcoming? Do we make it easy to move here, to find a job here? Pathways to leadership, that last bullet there. Are we creating pathways for younger and more diverse populations? Certainly the millennials, the Gen Z, the most diverse demographic profile that we've ever had. And do we have age, gender, and racial diversity in our leadership structure? Do we have pathways to make that happen? Education. Multi-layers in Lincoln, great opportunities. So UNL, community colleges, K through 12 schools. We're going to be looking for a variety of ways to enrich educational opportunities within the context of the downtown plan. Lifestyles. Congratulations, you may notice those bike corrals popping up around downtown, and I believe next week is the official unveiling of your bike share program. I don't know if you saw in one of these slides, bike share is the fastest growing mode of transportation ever on the planet. There are now more than 2.5 million bicycles available through bike share around the world. So that's coming to Lincoln, and that is, again, appeals to that younger demographic, although, you know, it's okay if us older folks ride them too. Couple more recommendations for Lincoln. Keep it fun, entertaining, and interesting. Certainly there are pockets of that in Lincoln in terms of places where we can do all sorts of stuff. So we're going to be looking at ways to how do we get more entertainment, more live music, other activities that'll keep people downtown and attract them down here. On competition, do we have the right infrastructure to promote small business development? So partnering with the educational institutions, also making sure we're wired, that we have the computing capacity for all this computing power that we carry around with us and that we need for business development. And then lastly, sustainability, making sure that we're in balance economically, environmentally, but also that social equity issue. Are we creating opportunities for a whole variety of different people to thrive in Lincoln? So my last slide, and then I think we're going to have a few minutes here. I don't know exactly where we are on time, but we're going to have a few minutes here for questions. This is the bottom line of this whole presentation, and really something to think about as you're talking to us tonight. Never in anyone's lifetime in this room have all these trends converged to favor downtowns. It's really an unprecedented time. You feel it in Lincoln, you see it in other cities across the country. So this downtown plan really comes at a unique period of time where we can think boldly and really take Lincoln into the next era. So with that, and there's that website where you can grab our trends report. So with that, I think we have a runner, and we'll take a few minutes, Paul, of questions. So we have runners on both sides. We are runner rich here.
Is this on? Oh, yes. Paul over here, and Andrew's going to be on that side. If anyone has a question, you could just raise your hand, and we'll bring the microphone over to you. I saw this one first. Yes, ma'am.
Marty. Okay, so you've done all this analysis across the country. I think what we need to find is what is unique for Lincoln, not that these are the trends that are happening everywhere in the country. So I guess I would be curious as to what do you see as more unique to Lincoln that we can really build on?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to be exploring. That's what this downtown plan is really all about. So I think just from an individual that's been here in town, sort of popping in and out the last 20 years, I think there are a few that are unique that stand out to me. And I'll share those with you, but tonight we really want to hear from you, that given these trends are happening everywhere, so given these trends, what is unique to Lincoln? I would point out two, just real quickly. One is housing. You've had a one-dimensional housing market the last few years in Lincoln. There's been a lot of student housing, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of market rate housing, and also beyond one bedroom. You either have one bedroom or you got 4 rooms and in a dorm here. So are there housing opportunities that we can explore in Lincoln? I would argue there's an exceptionally strong market demand for that type of thing. The other thing I would love us to explore that is unique to Lincoln is that big university right downtown. Not every city has one of those. So UNL, how do we make sure that that is a pipeline to fuel the economy of Lincoln? It has in the past. I think it's worked extremely well, but I think we can take that up a notch moving forward. So tonight, you know, if you live here, I don't live here. I parachute in here. So it's you know, I don't want to be disingenuous and tell you what you need to do here. We want to hear from you tonight at these different stations of what you think the opportunities are for Lincoln. Another question?
Yes, I was wondering, why do you think that bike sharing would be great for the city? It wasn't great in Manhattan. Why would it be great here?
Well, number one, you're not Manhattan. Unless you're talking about Manhattan, Kansas. I don't think you are, though. College town. These bike shares work so much better in college towns than in non-college towns. So that's number one. Number two is your climate. I realize, you know, not every day is a great day to ride a bike. Some days you get blown over. But there's enough pleasant days here that we think you'll get some good usage out of it. And thirdly, just these trends. Frankly, people who are in that 20 to 35 age range, they gravitate toward it. And lastly, let me make one last point, because in Denver, bike lanes have happened in downtown Denver, and this bike share has happened in Denver. But the bike lanes were demanded not by environmentalists and not by bike crazy people. The bike lanes in downtown Denver were demanded by the employers, by the companies. And the companies said, look, there's a great demand among our workforce to have alternatives to cars. And then also in Denver, the employers said, look, we don't even care if they use the bike lanes. We want that to be part of the image of our city. We want that to be communicated. So when someone's thinking about moving here and living here, that is a core value that this city cherishes. So we'll see. In most cities, the bike share, the bike lanes, sometimes it's an acquired taste. It takes a while. But I'd argue as a college town, you've got a better chance than most for it working here.
So what's the role of healthcare in all of this planning? We're talking 4 generations. We're talking about having a vibrant downtown. Are there healthcare model discussions going on in your planning?
Yeah, really good question. So not only healthcare, but healthy cities. So the healthcare itself, hospitals, clinics, those types of things, those are different anchors that we look for in cities. But there's a whole school of thought that is very timely, I think, to look at in Lincoln is how do we make downtown a place that is for healthy lifestyles. It sort of goes back to the bike question, the walking question. This is a new sort of trend in what planners do, is we're working a lot with healthcare providers to design places that promote active living. So there's 2 dimensions to this. There's the actual healthcare providers themselves and finding where they fit best in downtown. And then there's also designing ways to get around downtown that are going to promote healthy lifestyles. We hope to attack it in both ways.
As I look around the room, the folks in this room don't necessarily represent all of the people who live and work downtown. Can you talk about maybe what you've done to reach out to communities of color and low-income communities in this process?
Sure, that's a great question. We actually are planning to take this show on the road. So this morning, for example, we met with folks in the south of downtown neighborhood. And what we've found is sometimes you're speaking to the choir when you invite people to an event like this. You're speaking to people who are most inclined, most interested in downtown. So we're actually proposing on subsequent visits to visit some of the adjacent neighborhoods in particular. And we've heard a number of things about Lincoln. In fact, one thing I've learned, I said I'd worked here off and on for 20 years, but I didn't realize that you guys are a pretty big portal for refugees and have different nationalities represented here. So the quick answer is we're going to do some work in terms of neighborhoods, in terms of going to neighborhoods and having this dialogue. The online survey, I realize not everyone has access to online. However, younger people and also people of color tend to gravitate. National studies have shown that they tend to gravitate toward online platforms, so we're using that. We're also open to ideas. So tonight, if you've got some ideas for us on how to reach out to different groups that you think would be interested, that may be otherwise neglected, we're all ears on that tonight at these different stations.
Hey, I just wanted to speak out and raise a counterpoint on the bike share topic. While Manhattan totally screwed it up, there was a lot of stuff that went on behind the scenes that messed it over. I lived in Washington, D.C. for 3 or 4 years when they were instituting bike share, and it was phenomenal. It was done right. They rolled it out gradually. They started at the core. They went out to the periphery, and it was highly adopted and really filled in a lot of gaps. Now, Washington, D.C. is obviously like 2 orders of magnitude or beyond from what Lincoln is, but I think as you roll that out to neighborhoods beyond downtown, it can really incentivize people to get to this part of the city in a completely different and green way. And I think that's actually, I'm very psyched to see these little racks starting to pop up now. So just, I wanted to offer a pro. Thank you.
My question for you is maybe asked in 2 ways. One, what is I don't know, you've seen many cities, I'm sure, around the country. What's a model for Lincoln to aspire to be like? Or what would you consider a competitive city for Lincoln?
Oh, that's a really good question. Model or competitive cities. I would quickly sort of think about, because you've got a couple dimensions here. You've got the college town dynamic, so I think of other college towns. And then you're pretty close to a major market. You know, you're only 45 minutes from a population center of 1.5 million. Places like Midwest college towns that come to mind that we've worked in, a place like Iowa City, actually, comes to mind. Madison, which has a state capital and a major university. I think there are things we can learn from places like that. Gosh, you're very unique. I mean, it's too big, but Austin has the same dynamics of a major university and a state capital. So I would, if we're going to compare you to other cities and things that have worked, initially I would think of college towns in the Midwest. So definitely Madison, definitely Iowa City, maybe Manhattan, although I haven't been there, the other Manhattan. Those are the kinds of places I think we could learn some things moving forward.
My name is Jamison Jensen. Thank you for being here tonight. I work in Southeast Lincoln, and that seems to be the last 10, 15 years where a lot of money has gone. And I guess just asking around the office today what people enjoy about being downtown, they said they never go downtown because it takes too long to get there. Do you have any work that you do to get people downtown?
Yeah, I chuckle a little bit because, you know, coming from Denver, getting down here is like, where are they coming from? There's nowhere more than 15 minutes away from here. But I think you know, making downtown relevant again, which is happening naturally in some respects. I think the demographics, in a way, are looking at that. Downtown's much more relevant in other places, certainly to the Gen X, to the millennials that we talked about. But I think that's what we're going to be looking at in this plan, is how do we make the downtown experience something that we want to come down and see. Some of it is programming, and some of that is what the Downtown Lincoln Association actually does extremely well here. So yeah, putting on different events. I think someone mentioned First Friday and different festivals and events, those kinds of things. Certainly we're going to be looking at the retail. I know Lincoln has struggled with retail for what Dillard's closed in the late 80s, right? And that was the end. So we're not going to recapture those stores, but you know, what's sort of next for retail, and how can we make interesting local boutiques unique that are going to attract people down here? I'm a big fan on dining, and I don't think any city can have enough interesting, diverse restaurants, and certainly Haymarket is strong in that, and there's some great places that are sprinkled through downtown, but I think we could do better there. Entertainment will be really interesting to explore a variety of entertainment options for Lincoln that bring people down here. So my answer in short is looking at ways to strengthen the attractiveness of Lincoln. What I've found is that in cities that have that draw, and again I go back to my own hometown of Denver, when I was working in downtown revitalization in Denver in the late 80s, the number one problem in downtown Denver, people said, was parking. And there was nothing down there. It was a ghost town. Downtown Denver was a dump in the late 80s. But people, you know, they were complaining about parking. Today, they'll park 6-8 blocks from their destination and not think about it because there's just stuff going on and things to do. So that's sort of a long, rambling answer. But I think it's strengthening the overall appeal of downtown as a destination. And again, tonight, we're looking for your ideas. In fact, in the hallway, we're going to be looking for your ideas on retail and services. Over here on housing, we're going to be looking for your ideas on different amenities that may make you more inclined to live downtown as well. I think it's all connected. And honestly, at the end of the day, if they're not going to drive 15 minutes to come downtown, there may be no hope for some of these people, honestly.
Thank you for hosting tonight. I am a person that has lived in Lincoln for quite a while. I'm a part of the Lincoln board on the libraries. And I know that there's a push on to get a new library of some sort in downtown Lincoln. And I think with libraries, it's very, very important. And the people that are doing some planning on it are really focused on how libraries can be meaningful for all people. And so if you hear more about it, explore that yourself and support as you can. The other one is I am involved with immigrants, the Yazidi people especially, who was about 4,000 people here in Lincoln. I think an opportunity might be to have a senior or a city center that would house opportunities to folks that are coming from another country to have a place to go. We have a small church that we use. We could have more classes if we had more room. And we could also provide more transportation through the bus system and the bike system by having something downtown that they could use not only for entertainment, but for classes, for gathering, and for festivals.
Actually, thank you for both those ideas. And those types of ideas are what we want you to share with us at these tables tonight, different ways to improve downtown. The library comment too, we've heard that from many, many people about the need for a new central library. And I think that's part of what's going to be exciting through this process is helping folks understand that libraries today are not what they were 50 years ago. The 21st century library is an amazing place beyond books. It's a center for technology, and it really is a gathering place for many, many people in the community, and we do think that's a great opportunity for downtown. Paul, have we run out of time here, or are we going with one more?
I keep seeing hands come up. I know that we have lots of great questions. I think we could take two more, and then what we're going to do is break into the sessions. Brad's going to be here to talk a lot more about this at his station, as well as members from the other teams. So I think we'll do two more questions. Andrew?
Your question? I guess one of the questions that I had was, I saw that in your PowerPoint, it was listed, the statistic that the wealth distribution currently is very unequal. But instead of just seeing that as like a negative, how do you think different downtowns across the country have been able to take advantage of that and perhaps make it a good thing for downtown development?
So let me give you an example of the downside, and then I'll give you some ideas on how we combat that. San Francisco, California. There was an article about a year ago that said that San Francisco now, which has extraordinary inequality. It has the highest priced housing market in the United States. The median home there is $1.7 million. The median rent there is $4,500 a month. San Francisco now rates 99th out of the country's 100 largest cities in the per capita number of children. So what's happened is in San Francisco, it's a childless city because only the super wealthy can live there and families can't afford to stay there. So that's an extreme case. I'm not saying that Lincoln's going to become San Francisco. I do fear for Denver. I do fear for my hometown. I think we're going on that trajectory right now. So to answer your question, what have people done to really embrace the diversity and create the opportunity that we're talking about? Two quick examples. One is housing and looking at ways to support a diverse portfolio of housing, whether in housing type and price. And there's some innovative community-based ideas. There are things called land trusts. There are things called accessory dwelling units where you can build something in your backyard over your garage. There are different ways to encourage developers through tax incentives and a variety of things to create a balanced range of housing. So I'd say housing is an area to really look at. The other is education. Do we have the education opportunities? Now, a downtown plan is not necessarily going to change schools, but we can cite that education in schools, and I'm talking about K through 12, I'm not talking about university or postgraduate. In K through 12, are there some ways that the downtown community can partner with the schools to make sure we have that opportunity, to make sure that the diversity, particularly in these schools in the south of downtown, that we celebrate that and that we really view that as a strength, and also business partnerships with the schools, so we create some pathways, some apprenticeships, some internships to give kids exposure to how the world works. So those are just a couple quick examples, but I think housing, education are two areas that we're really looking at nationally to create opportunity for people of all incomes. Sir, you're the closer. I think you're the last question.
Well, as you probably know, our city is growing at the rate of 1% in population per year. And our employment rate is down less than 3%, unemployment rate. And a few years ago, space could be rented for downtown retail for about $12 to $14 a square foot. Now it's up to $20 a square foot. And I agree with you that the millennials need reasonable pricing. But the cost of housing is, because of all the influx, is going up all the time. And county assessor has reassessed the properties, increased the value of all these homes and residences. And so I think that we should address all of those statistics and challenges as we try to meet the needs of the millennials and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And all I would say is I agree with you. I agree with you, and our intention through this planning process is to investigate that. And also, I think at the end of the day, I would assume most everybody in this room tonight, I mean, there's other things to do on a Tuesday night, right? There's movies to see, there's television to watch, there's other things to do. But the fact you're here means everyone in this space tonight cares about downtown, and probably cherishes Lincoln certainly the way it is. We don't want to fundamentally change Lincoln. We may want to make it better, but we don't necessarily want to turn it into something different. And I think that's one thing in my 20 years of working with this town is you guys are pretty stable. You're not a boom-bust town the way that my city is. You're sensible, you're pragmatic. But you're also aspirational. The city has always wanted to improve. So I think we want to work within the culture here, address the issues you just mentioned, and with your help, starting tonight, deliver a vision for downtown that is innovative but still very pragmatic and very doable. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to JJ Folsom, our project manager. He is going to quickly take you through some results of that online survey, and then we're going to get to work tonight. We're going to roll up our sleeves. Do we have an hour left tonight? Where are we on time? So we have an hour left. So when JJ's done, we're going to be at different tables. Urban design is going to be over here, transportation here, housing here. I'll be in the hallway. Again, they booted me to the hallway. And I can answer any questions on the presentation, but more importantly, I'll be looking for your ideas on improving the economy.
Thank you, Brad. So as Brad mentioned earlier, we have an online survey going on. It's been up for about a month, and we're going to leave this up until probably the beginning of June. So far, we've had 600 people respond to this. I'll have the website up at the end. It's plandowntown.com. If you want to write it down right now, we encourage those of you that haven't taken the survey. So far, here's what we've seen out of the people that have answered the survey. 44% come downtown weekly outside of their job if they work downtown. 36% are downtown employees. 31% in that millennial age, and 22% in the Generation X age. When asked what words best capture your vision for downtown in 2030, so this is a wide open question similar to the one asked earlier. Vibrant, walkable, accessible, entertainment, innovative, and parking. We've never worked on a downtown plan where we haven't heard that parking is an issue. So you're not alone in that. But the vision for downtown, I'm not sure how parking becomes a vision for downtown, but that is one of the top answers for this question. What brings you downtown? We heard this earlier in the earlier questions. Restaurant and bars, number one, 82%. A huge majority are coming downtown to eat and drink. And then second, concerts and movies, so that entertainment factor. And then sporting events, UNL sporting events in particular. I forgot to mention that I'm only giving you a brief highlight of this survey. There's about 15 questions. I'm only going through about 6 of those here. So when you're in downtown, how do you most often get around? So a lot of people are walking, so that tells us improve the walking experience in downtown. 67% of people are walking in downtown once they get to downtown. Driving, 28%, and then bicycling, only 4% here, but that might have something to do with the infrastructure in downtown, and this is taken before you have the bike share program. So we hope this number will continue to increase. What amenities would make living downtown more attractive? A full-service grocery store, number one. We've heard that a lot. Yeah. If you're going to live downtown, you want convenience to be able to go get food. Additional parking. Here we go. Another close, second place there, 46%. Improved safety all times of the day. And parks and playgrounds, those family amenities that Brad talked about. What can attract people down here to live? So when asked what the single most important improvement to achieve the vision downtown, 15%, and what we've learned over the years in doing these types of surveys, anything over 10% is a very high response when you're asked just one. You can only answer one item here. So redevelop unused and vacant land or underutilized land. So the Pershing Center, post office, other vacant parcels in downtown. Improve the parking experience. Once again, parking. We can't do a downtown plan without talking about parking, and whether that's management of parking, supply, or location. More entertainment and events on weekends and evenings. Again, more entertainment. Entertainment is what's bringing, we saw 82% of people are coming downtown because of the entertainment. So people want more of that. And more neighborhood retail and services. So those daily needs in order to live. Grocery stores, daycare, medical facilities, dentists, dry cleaning, those types of everyday services for a lot of people. So as I said, I was going through that very quickly. So now the fun part of the evening, I hope that most of you will continue and stay here and visit our stations. We have on your right is the Urban Design Station. So we have our experts from Civitas here talking about what improvements can be made to downtown from a streetscape, and other urban design type elements, building improvements. And then in the middle here, we're going to have the downtown living. So what housing types do people want to see downtown? Also, what are some desired amenities like we talked about here with the grocery stores? Over on your left is going to be the transportation and mobility station. So this is talking about bicycles, bicycle pedestrian connections, transit, vehicles, parking, everything dealing with transportation and moving around downtown. And then as Brad mentioned, out in the hallway where you came in the entryway, he'll be, in addition to answering questions about the global trends presentation, he'll also talk about economic development and innovation, what types of jobs are needed downtown. So again, we want to get your input here. We're trying not to guide the discussion. We just want to hear from you. We're capturing all this information tonight. So with that, I'm going to close. Again, here's the survey location, plandowntown.com. And this is not just the survey. This is where you can find all information about this project. So we will have, the schedule is on this website, notes from our previous meetings are on the website, and then the detailed schedule for our upcoming meeting in May 22nd through the 24th. All those details are going to be up on the website. And I believe in the next few days, this presentation will be up on the website, so if you have friends, family, colleagues that you want to take a look at this. So I urge you to write that down, take a picture of it, and I'm going to let you loose now and go visit some of these stations. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I appreciate you taking the time.